we're excited to welcome everyone back and start off today with a career panel and really hear from a number of experts in the field of just, what is their experience like in industry? How do they transition from graduate school, and just give us some general advice on making this transition. Thanks everyone for joining. We're really looking forward to today's session, and I'll turn it over to Tal Margalith to do a little bit of introductions and tell us about the format that we're going to run for today's panel. So Tal, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Javier. So hi, everybody. I'm Tal Margalith. I'm the Executive Director of BioPACIFIC MIP over at UC Santa Barbara. Super excited about this panel. Having been in industry myself, I always appreciate the perspective that folks out there in industry bring to discussions with academics about the differences between the research at these two places. Very happy that we have three folks from very established companies here to join us today. So maybe I'll just very quickly make the introductions, but let them, in their own words, get into a bit more detail. Just one small point. We had a lot of questions submitted by the attendees, so thank you very, very much to everybody in advance for sending these. It really helped at least give us a framework for today's discussion. That said, this is meant to be a conversation. So if there are questions that pop up that you think are relevant to the discussion today, please put them in the Q&A. Javier and I will keep one eye to the side. So in case something comes up and we want to talk about it, we can pull that in. And then also, if we have time at the end for some questions that weren't there, we can do a lightning round and see how these guys do on their toes with stuff that they haven't prepared for. So we'll see how that works. So with that, again, I want to welcome Kelvin, Kermit, and Annabelle to the panel today. Just a couple words, right? Kermit Kwan is a tech advisor with Solvay. He's been at Solvay since 2004 after a stint at Dow. He's managed various groups within Solvay, including spinning out Global Foams into its own division, and has also been a tech scout at Solvay. Annabelle Watts completed her PhD in chemistry from the University of Minnesota in 2018. Before that, we were very happy to have her as a chemistry gaucho here at UC Santa Barbara, where she completed her bachelor's degree. And she's now at 3M as a senior research scientist looking at functional materials for biology. So I think that's particularly relevant for what we do here at BioPACIFIC, and definitely want to get into that a little bit. And then last but not least, Kelvin Wong has been with BASF Enzymes in San Diego since 2013, although before then was with Verenium, which I guess got purchased by BASF as well. So he's been in the field for quite a while looking at naturally derived enzymes, and he's currently the senior manager of Analytical Formulations and Applications Division at BASF Enzymes. And he comes with a master's and bachelor's from UC San Diego. So now that I've done all that introduction, I actually want to switch over to you guys, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit about this. Tell us a little bit about what your company does, how big is your company, which in this case I think will be quite large in all three cases, and maybe expand a little bit on your role within the company. So Kelvin, do you want to start?
Sure. Give us a start here. So maybe just talk a little bit about BASF and then where I fit into the whole picture. So I think BASF is one of the largest chemical companies in the world, but most people actually probably in the US especially don't really know that much about it, except for maybe the older ones of us remember cassette tapes and VHS tapes that were made by BASF. But really, we're in a lot of chemistry, so surfactants, raw materials, intermediates, even batteries. But we actually have quite a large bioscience division, which is where I'm part of, and it's actually headquartered out of North America. So there's plant sciences, fermentation, agriculture work, and obviously enzymes. And so really for us and our focus here in San Diego, it's a lot on biotechnology and enzymes for things like bioenergy, like ethanol, animal feed, and in food and laundry. So sustainability actually has been a core for our company and our focus. And that's kind of part of why we were, as Verenium, bought by BASF, as they want to build up more of this capability in the company. So as a company size, is about 100,000, a little over 100,000 globally. And there's about 10,000 of us or so in the US. And I think, as Tal had mentioned, currently I'm leading what is our analytical chemistry group, but also an automation high-throughput screening group, and a digital team. And we can talk about that maybe a little bit later. But in terms of career and things that I've done, I actually started as a synthetic chemist and was actually more interested in using enzymes for synthetic chemistry. But in the time of my career with the company and its different iterations, which has now been over 20 years, have gone from synthesis to fermentation to now kind of these other areas. So touch a lot of areas.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelvin. How about you, Kermit?
Yes, hi, I'm Kermit Kwan. So first of all, happy to be here and participate. I'm with company Solvay. We're not as big as BASF. We're about 23,000 employees. We're a global company based and headquartered in Brussels, Belgium. Okay. And we're about a $10 billion company as far as revenues. We have about 10 different business units scattered throughout the world. And I in particular am with what we call our specialty polymers business unit. Solvay, some of you, especially if you took general chemistry 101, you may remember one of the first reactions of sodium bicarbonate is called the Solvay process. It was an industrial process for making sodium bicarbonate, and that's the origins of the company. Company is very old. It's about what I think almost 170 years old now, coming up, and so that has its early origins of sodium bicarbonate, and we still make today from those starting materials these commodity chemicals. We make things like surfactants. We have a healthcare business. We make, for instance, we're the #1 producer of vanilla flavoring, which is used all over the world. And then we go all the way up to mining technologies, and then we have our specialty polymers and composites business, which is where I'm located. And there, as far as my experience, by training, a material scientist in polymer characterization expertise from graduate school. And we'll talk a bit more about as far as whatever your questions are as far as career and stuff like that. So again, happy to be here.
Thanks, Kermit. Annabelle?
Yeah, so for 3M, a little bit about 3M, there's about, in terms of size, 93,000 employees. I think the last number I saw was like 32 billion in annual sales. Global company headquartered here in Minneapolis, or St. Paul, Minnesota, where I'm located right now. And about, I think, 8,000 of those are researchers and scientists. The function that I work in right now is in the corporate research materials lab. And I think it's one of the few that still exists today in some of these larger companies. And so we don't have direct customers in the sense that, the products that I make don't actually go direct to customers. I work with other researchers and product developers in the business groups. So we have 4 business groups, and they span a wide range. I think when people hear 3M, they kind of think of the things we see as consumers. So Post-it notes, Scotch tape, sandpaper, things like that. But so in addition to our consumer business group, which covers like stationery and office, consumer healthcare, and home improvement, we also have 3 other business groups. So transportation and electronics, where we have customers in original equipment manufacturing. So that's where we develop technology for display materials, automotive and aerospace, electronics, transportation safety, all of those things. We also have the safety and industrial business group, where we do personal safety, which you've seen in the headlines recently through the pandemic, abrasives, electronics, industrial minerals. And then our 4th business group not in any specific order, is our healthcare business group, where we do medical solutions, oral care, separation and purification, and health informatics, including, and we also have food safety in there. And so we span a lot of different businesses, a very diverse set of technologies and products. And so within the corporate lab function, we do a lot of technology development to support the products that go out into these markets. So I think I addressed kind of all of the question bullet points.
So I guess though, as the most recent person to have transitioned from academia to industry, can you tell us a little bit about how you found the position you're currently in? I mean, like, and what considerations kind of went into, finding this position for you?
Yeah, so this one's maybe like an anticlimactic answer, but I found my position through university recruitment. So it's, companies like ours and like these others that are represented on this panel, we go out to certain universities and recruit out of those. So I was hired through like the university recruitment process, through, I think, some of the university, between the university and company relationships. I did look beyond that. I mean, like the job search can be very diverse. So there's ways that you can get positions at 3M that are beyond the annual recruitment cycle. So there's job postings listed all the time that are not necessarily connected to the true annual recruitment process from schools. So yeah, that's kind of how I found my job. What led me to choose it was I am passionate about sustainability. That was an area that I knew that 3M has been doing some technology development in. And so I was interested and connected to some of those technology advances and was interested in seeing more. I thought the opportunity to look at technology development in industry in like a corporate lab environment would be interesting. It's a little different than what it might look like at other places. And really, I think one of the things that I like, and I still like to this day, that I liked when I was applying, and I still like to this day, is the concept of our 15% time, where we can spend 15% of our time doing things that aren't technically within our job like requirements or job like given tasks or whatever you might want to call it, our charter. So I get to do a lot of diverse things within that 15% time and have a lot of flexibility there.
And you report on this 15% to your management, or this is just sort of like stuff that
Yeah, so you don't, so essentially it's supported, it's fully supported. So you have 15% time that your management supports in the sense that they don't discourage it in any way. And so I tell my management about what I do in my 15% time, and they're totally supportive of me being super flexible with that. So yeah, it's a culture of encouraging you to take on different challenges that you might not otherwise have.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm curious, Kelvin, right? You've been at BASF for quite a bit longer, so I don't know how much you can tell us a little bit about, how you ended up in that position, right? And I guess it would have been with Verenium, right?
Sure. No, definitely. And maybe it might even be more useful to talk about how we look for people nowadays. But I actually ended up in the position through a contract agency. And at the time, with the prior company, Diversa, actually, which became Verenium, we were hiring a lot kind of as contract to hire. So it was a way to kind of get people on board quick and then check them out. And then if you like them, take them on full time. And that has been a change, I guess, maybe just for everyone here to understand in industry, at least that I've seen in Southern California, that there is a lot of this going on. But it's not the only route. by any means. And I think what Annabelle mentioned also with university recruiting is a great path, because at least some of my other jobs prior, university recruiting did help at least get leads and get you in the door, basically. And I will say also things like this BioPACIFIC group, and I think opportunities through things like university relations with companies where you have tours or conferences or things are a great chance to just make some connections, because you never know when you might come back around and go, hey, I went to this company before, I met so-and-so over there, and I want to apply. And having that connection personally does help a lot of times, just to kind of get that first foot in the door, and then people go, oh yeah, I remember Tal. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's give him a shot. Let's bring him in for an interview and just chat with him. So
just as to follow up, I mean, have you seen, I know that many of the students, because of COVID, and being able to travel to conferences and stuff, how has it been impacted on your guys' side with regard to exactly recruiting or getting exposed to talent? Have you guys seen this as a challenge as well from the industry side?
It's definitely, well, that plus I think just markets are relatively hot. So if you're graduating now, it's a good time. But I think it has been challenging to get FaceTime. I mean, we used to, for example, through connections to Scripps and other universities close by, and even to all the UCs, we would host just like a group of students to just tour through, or PhDs or new grads, and really just spend some time with them, an hour or two, just at our site, maybe 30, 40 of them, and just kind of walk through. So that kind of thing has been much more difficult, to be honest. There are still some of these web-based conferences like this, which provide a little bit of a view, but in my mind, it's still not as good as just talking to the person in person. But I think we're all doing what we have to do, right?
Kermit, has that been your experience as well, right? That it's, I mean, have you been involved in interacting with potential talent?
Oh, yes, definitely. So in fact, I was just doing a virtual recruiting event last week with the AC through the ACS. As far as with COVID during the pandemic, we had actually, just because of business uncertainty, put things on hold during that time frame. But for us, I mean, we've started actively recruiting again now. We're hiring. So we've been doing a good bit of hiring. So we see ourselves ramping up as far as hiring. So it's a good time for graduates, I think, coming out, especially if you're looking at in the next year. Yeah.
And how is what you're having folks go through when they're applying? How does that match your personal story, like of getting into Solvay back in the day, right? I mean, is that?
Well, I can tell you a little bit. So just to add to some of the stories that Annabelle and Kevin were saying, I can have a little bit of a different perspective. One thing is that I'll tell all students is that, especially if you're in science and materials and chemistry and polymers stuff, it's a small world out there. It's much smaller than you think. And always stay connected with people because you never know. People work with different companies, but you're all still, it's really a small community when you really get down to it. And you never know, your classmate may be your boss one day. So, and but as far as that, when I looked at Solvay, my first job was with Dow. And that was through the kind of they sent out job opportunities to university. I happened some classmates were there, but I'll tell you that my job to Solvay, that actually came from through contacts. So we actually had come back to the university for a reunion for our professor, and it was during that time that I met another former student of our advisor. And so we were just talking, and it just so happened that, she was with Solvay. She had this opportunity. So we started chatting. And so that's how that came up. So again, always, stay in touch with your classmates and people that you meet. This is before LinkedIn. That's why those things like LinkedIn are very, very helpful in doing that. So.
Yeah, and there was actually quite a number of questions, right, that were submitted about like, do you guys have advice on how to build those networks and how to maintain those networks? Kelvin, Annabelle, I don't know if you guys have additional stuff to add to Kermit's sage advice on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that Kermit just said, I mean, stay in touch with your classmates is a great part of it. I mean, obviously you can't stay in touch with everyone, but at least a few classmates that are in maybe the same or similar industries. Because I've had a lot of people in BASF where, you know, I don't even know them, and they're maybe across the country, but they go, hey, I saw your job opportunity there, and I have a friend who's looking for a job, and they're moving to San Diego, or they're just finishing school, and I think that their profile would fit you. Here's their resume. And you know that, you know, it's maybe you don't want to say it, but that does help. I mean, it throws them right to the top, and you go, okay, let me take a look at Javier here and see, you know, do I want to take him? Do I want to at least have a conversation? Because sometimes you will, you know, sometimes you're not getting very many resumes, but sometimes you'll get flooded with resumes, and you're just basically like scanning them as fast as you can. And I think those kind of things just help to bring someone up to the top, and then you kind of go, okay, at least I know this person through someone, and they have said a good word for him, so I should check them out.
And what was that, your experience as well?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I wanted to add to those comments, and keep in mind, I'm not reviewing resumes like they are in terms of screening candidates. I might sit kind of in the filter candidates realm, but for like screening interviews during university recruitment. But what I'll say is, you know, with networks, like over time, everybody's network gets a little bit bigger, right? So every time you enter a new role or a new company, or even like have a new engagement like this, the more experience you have, the more your network broadens a little bit more. And so if you can, like as a graduate student, can figure out how to make a connection with somebody, they have a pretty big network that they can help you. And a lot of people do want to help. It's, you know, some of it is, right, dependent on just a natural connection, right? Like say, connecting over something of common interest or of common technology or whatever it is, common interests. But I think forging some of those connections can be really valuable because, yeah, you never know, not in a way where you can like use them, but you never know when it'll be of value in like down the line. So it's always nice to, yeah, take the opportunity to broaden your networks, engage with people you wouldn't. It's really uncomfortable. I know we as scientists can be a little bit more introverted. So taking that step and just introducing yourself to somebody that's not talking to somebody else, or following up with somebody after they say something that you really connected with, I think can go a long way in just making a new connection.
Yeah, maybe just one thing to add to something that Annabelle said that just reminded me, you know, at conferences often, you know, there are these kind of trade show parts where also there's job fairs. And I think sometimes people underestimate those opportunities to really just connect with some of the people there. But I know we have, you know, actively gone to conferences and sat, you know, in the little booth waiting for people to come by, and definitely have gotten a lot of people through that process because, you know, someone comes up and they engage and they really want to talk to you rather than just like, here's my resume, call me if you want me. You know, and when they engage and you kind of get a sense of the person, you kind of go, hey, you know, I really want to call that person back, and there's someone that I might be interested in for a position. And I will say that we have gone back and thumbed through those resumes quite a few times and go, oh, hey, remember that guy or that girl? Let's bring them in. Let's call them and just see, you know, maybe they're interested.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of an important point. Maybe you guys can chat a little bit real quick before we move on to, you know, what about if you're coming from a school that isn't part of the recruiting circuit, right? And how do you introduce yourself and how do you build that network? And I think that's, you know, one of the things that BioPACIFIC is trying to do is to reach across all institutions across the country, and maybe speak a little bit to, the people in the audience that are also coming from places that, yeah, some of these companies are not actively recruiting at. How do you get your foot in the door? And one of the examples is exactly what you just said, Calvin, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely still, I mean, even if we're not actively, let's say, for example, UCSB or the UC system, we do have an active relationship. But I mean, we still meet people at conferences. I mean, that's probably maybe one of the places. But I think, obviously there's still the regular application process. So don't get me wrong that we don't go through that process. But I think that, using your connections through LinkedIn, I mean, even through this BioPACIFIC group, you probably connect with a few people here, and just kind of looking through and seeing, okay, hey, I might be interested in 3M, yeah. Maybe I might shoot a message over to Annabelle and just say, hey, I'm finishing up in a couple months. I'm interested in this area of science. What do you think? And it might be just a conversation starter. Now, don't everyone, well, maybe everyone flood Annabelle's email box. I'm not sure.
Kermit, you were gonna say something along the same topic?
Yeah, I think have you ever referring to, like, say, if you're from a university who's not on the main circuit, I guess you'd say. One is that, for instance, last week I was working with the ACS. It's a graduate conference. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so one of the reasons that we were actually involved with that is exactly what you were just saying, is that there's the opportunity for a lot of universities and students to participate, and we can actually interact with them where we would normally not recruit at. Like there's certain universities we'll actually actively recruit at, but then those are great opportunities where you can meet people from companies and make a connection, because you may be from from a university where it's not on the main circuit, and that gives you an opportunity. So for students to think about those things, that even something like a graduate research conference, or like it can be an opportunity for students to make those connections.
Yeah. And yeah, I welcome flooding my inbox. So thanks, Calvin,
you heard it here,
for advertising that. But what I'll also add is, like conferences are a great way. If you see something, like us sitting on a panel and we say something, connect. The other thing that I'll say too is, like, I just did this. I reached out to somebody who I had no connection to, but I read a report of theirs online, and this is not internal to 3M or within, any of my networks. And so I did a cold email. I did a cold reach out, and they responded. And so, I think I wouldn't let not having those connections or not being a part of the recruitment cycle or whatever be a barrier to, reaching out and getting connected. And especially if you see something, like somebody shared something on LinkedIn and you're like, oh, this interview is super cool. Let me see what they're like, connect with them on LinkedIn, say, I saw this interview that you did. Can we talk more?
Yeah.
So just engage.
I guess I want to get it at some point in this conversation about, like, again, what it's like to actually do the research. But the stuff that we're talking about right now ties into quite a number of questions that, when people approach your company and looking for positions. I mean, what are the types of skill sets that you guys are looking for? And in particular, one question that came in just recently was like, how do you balance the hard skills, right? Things like, do you know how to code? Do you know how to do data analysis, with the soft skills, right? And I'm very interested in the perspective, both from Annabelle as you as a researcher, but also from Kelvin and Kermit as managers in your space, right? Is it this? Are you guys both looking for the same stuff or not? So I don't know where we dive into this sort of complex topic, right? But maybe Kermit, we'll start with you, right? I mean, like, what are the skill sets that you guys are looking for, right? And the the types, right? The categories.
You're talking about the soft skills.
Yeah, or I mean, or are there particular hard skills that you guys, I mean, especially, companies that now are engaging with centers like BioPACIFIC, you're like, wow, we were really missing XYZ in our portfolio of scientists.
Well, as far as, well, I guess I'll start with the hard skills. So hard skills, I've actually get this question often. So as far as the hard skills, which is your research or the background you have, a lot of people will ask, hey, I work in this so-and-so area of biochemistry, is that going to make it harder for me to get a job in so-and-so company? So what I encourage students is that, especially when you present yourself, is focus on your skills that you've learned, okay? Not necessarily what you've done and the project you've done. That's more important if you're looking at, like a postdoc or something like that. But for industry, if it's a good company to work with, like what you have on this panel, they're thinking bigger, because the truth of it is that you're not going to be working on what you've done in graduate school in industry. You're going to be working on so many different things, okay? And so, it's more about what are your skills. So if you're a good chemist, you're a good chemist. No matter if you're working in biochemistry or you're working in organic or you're working in polymers, you're a good chemist. And, focus on that aspect of what you've been learning in school. As far as the soft skills, for us, the most important things in our company, in our culture, is number one is collaboration. So all these experiences that you get, such as working across different departments, working with different research groups, working in these different centers, those are the skills that you're taking away from your experience. And again, focus on your skills. And that's very important, because that's the way industry, at least definitely in our company, way it really works, is that nothing is done in isolation. In order to go from a lab to production, there are many, many steps and many, many people that you will have to interact with just on a daily basis. And that's just on one project. And then you'll have multiple projects as well. So one is, collaboration, working well with people, being able to interact, and being able to, I guess you would say, adjust to who you're talking to. Okay, you may be talking to a mechanical engineer, you may be talking to a organic person, where everyone really speaks a little bit different language. And so you have to be able to sometimes translate it into their language and to be able to get things across. So that's one point. I'll let the others chime in on that.
Annabelle, Kelvin, any thoughts on this? I mean, in particular, Kermit touched on this a little bit about being, a good chemist, regardless of what it is that you spend time on. But a lot of folks are concerned about, like, how do I show myself as a jack of all trades, or do I really want to show myself as really good and specialized in one particular area, despite the fact that, honestly, at the end of the day, I am a good chemist? I mean, can you talk a little bit about what that balance looks like? Kelvin, I see you unmuted, so you get to go first.
Sure. No, I think Kermit really covered it well, but, and maybe just to add a little bit, I do think what he said about showing, that you understand what you do, not necessarily your specific project, is really important, because the way to look at it is, you're not going to work on the same thing that you worked on in graduate school. It's pretty unlikely. But people want to know that, hey, you can translate those skills into this new company. And so I think maybe one thing there is even looking at any potential interview that you have and kind of going, okay, well, BASF is working on this and I'm interviewing for this job. How do my skills translate into something? I may never have worked in enzymes, but how can my skills apply to this, and what can I bring to the table to help you, basically help BASF do their job? I will also agree that, communication and the ability to work with other people is probably one of the most important things, because you're not a solo flight here at any company, really. Maybe a small startup, but pretty much any of these companies that you have here and most other companies, we work in team environments across different disciplines. So I think it's not only working and communicating, but trying and making an effort to understand what the people next to you do, so that you can actually speak intelligently into their areas, and they can speak intelligently into your area. And that's how, better products are really built, because there's an understanding of it. It's not just, hey, look, I'm going to do my chemistry part, you're going to do your engineering part, and somehow it's going to come together. It's an interaction, and you can really then build, what you're really looking for, which is maybe a car, a new surfactant, a new, widget, whatever it is.
And how do you guys think about, I guess, maybe a little bit of some concrete advice for the students and stuff on the call of how would they prepare for that type of interview? Like what do you kind of advice do you guys think about that we could give that, when you're going into this interview with, let's say, BASF, 3M, or Solvay, like how do they start to understand how to broaden their scope so that they can be prepared for questions like you guys are describing, right? And putting them in that right space.
Maybe just one quick thought on that is, obviously look at the companies that you're interviewing at. so at least understand the position and understand the company a little bit. You don't have to know everything about the company, but also think about some questions that you're going to ask, because I think we always invite, and I think every company invites people to ask questions about the company they're interviewing with. And so you want to be prepared for that. I think also, since I think everyone on this audience is graduate students, usually at that level, you're almost always going to be doing at least a 15 to 45-minute presentation of some sort. And really, that's your chance to take your work that you've been doing for the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and really say, hey, not diving into a thesis defense on why you succeeded, but saying, hey, what was the impact of this, and what did I get out of this, and why should you care about how I did things? Because it's a great opportunity to really just show how you think, how you communicate, and then how you work with others.
Yeah. Annabelle, can you give some thoughts, but maybe also like pull in some of your personal experience having gone through this, I guess, maybe not super recently, but how was it like for you to try to cast that?
No, definitely. And I think Calvin really outlined some really great tangible examples, like concrete advice on that. And definitely, like, both of them said everything that I wanted to say in terms of, what companies are looking for. I think the things that I think about when I'm interviewing is using inclusive language. So there's an element to highlighting like your contribution, but at the same time, like, we don't work in silos. So being able to elegantly communicate the work that you're able to do, as well as where you work together can come across pretty quickly when you're listening to a presentation or listening to somebody talk about their work. One of the things that I think is valuable is highlighting, like, where you work together, and just also problem solving. So one of the things that we tend to do when we're talking about science is we say, this was accomplished, like, this is the result, this is like why we succeeded. But there's so many things that you can learn along the way where you can problem solve, and being able to incorporate that into your talk can go a long way in demonstrating your ability as a candidate to problem solve in a technical way, and be able to communicate it across your team, and like be able to communicate it to the people in the room, right? So one of the things I think Kermit said was adjust to the person you're talking to. You never know, right? Like, you can do a little bit of research, you can see kind of the technical background of the people that are interviewing you or that are going to be in the room, but sometimes you don't know, like, you don't know who might be in the room. And so there's like a good balance between being really deep technical, but also being able to speak in a way where you can, like, communicate not just your technical strengths, but what it means, and that you have a holistic view of the problem and the technology and the challenges and the impact that you've had.
I want to stay with you for a second, Annabelle, because I do want to in the 10 minutes that we have left or so, I want to transition to talking a little bit about what it's actually like once you've made the leap over to industry, right? And how does that really fit? I guess, when you're going up, right? I mean, to the extent that you could do research and understand, like where the person in industry already sits, right? I mean, you're coming from academia, you don't really have that. What was your personal like eye-opening experience like when you made the transition and you're like, what's the difference, right? Now that you're in 3M from what you had thought about maybe 3M as a graduate student, right?
Yeah, there's a few big differences, and I hope Kelvin and Kermit will back me up on this. So one of the differences that I noticed was emphasis in intellectual property. So that's where I see some nods. Okay, good. So that's where, right, like I didn't have that much exposure to intellectual property as a graduate student, and that was a pretty big learning curve. Like, what is patentable? What is infringing on a patent? What does it mean to do an IP landscape and develop an art matrix? And these are all words that were super unfamiliar to me that I learned on the job. And so it's not that it's a requirement to be able to do that before you start work at a company, but it is a skill that you develop, right? And it's something that you learn over time. And it's something where if you know how to read papers and you know how to intellectually, digest information and be able to take learnings from that, it's the same skill applied to a new area. So again, like something that's different from academia to industry, but also has similarities. The other thing that I'll add is, yeah, you're not always doing the same thing. So, I work in two different areas that one is closer to what I did in graduate school and one is completely different. So, most of my time right now actually sits in working in a microbiology lab, which is completely different than my chemistry and polymer science and polymer characterization background. And so being able to learn something new, being able to dive deep into a technical area, those are all skills that are translatable. And then the third thing that I want to add is that one of the bigger differences is, with your graduate work, you want to have like a coherent story. So your projects kind of have to flow between one another. And you might go really, really deep into your topic area. I think one of the things I'm experiencing is while a certain amount of depth is required in some of my projects, it's not as deep as my inclination is. Like, based off of my PhD training, I want to go real deep into a technology area, understand all of the fundamentals, but that's not practical, right? That doesn't always translate to the right technology development, the right performance. We're looking at more, practical performance testing. Just, does it work? And it's less tied to why does it work? It's more tied to, does it work and is it reproducible and can it meet all of these extreme performance characteristics? So yeah, maybe I'll hand it over to Kurt. Yeah.
Do you guys think that internships, one of the questions came up is, is internships a good way for students to kind of test the water and learn a little bit about what Annabelle just spoke about? I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on the internship pathway?
Yeah, I think definitely internships can help. And it may actually help also to broaden a little bit, see some of what Annabelle was just mentioning. And I would agree with everything that Annabelle just said. I mean, she covered quite a bit of it there. But that, there is an aspect in, I guess, industry, as we might say, where things are very product and I think release timeline driven. So it's kind of like the business wants a product, they're like, okay, look, you guys got 6 months or a year or whatever to get this done. It's not done, we're moving on to the next thing. And even if you're like, well, wait, but there's still something I want to do here. It's like they're like, sorry, out of time, got to move on to the next thing. That's not always the case, to be honest. But it definitely is very different, I think, from university and academia in that regard. Although I would say that I think even what I've seen in the UC system, at least, and I think it's true of many universities, there has been a shift also in the university systems to really focus a little bit more on this. I mean, you have universities spinning out companies, you have graduate labs basically focusing on a technology, and then they go, hey, wait a minute, why do we want to sell this to BASF? We can make our own company and do this ourselves. And so, I mean, I think there's actually a good shift in universities to really kind of broaden their approach as well, to not just be like, okay, we're just going to make you be expert on this one topic, but they're like, hey, what can I do with this research that you just spent, so much of your time doing? What can we turn that into? And maybe that's probably the biggest difference, is the companies are always trying to make a product, and they have to fulfill a bottom line of some sort. So their focus has to be on what can we do with this. I will say that there is an aspect, I think, in all of these companies represented and many others, where there still is an opportunity to go deep. We have what we call experts. I think other companies call them different things, but if that is your inclination to really like, I want to be the polymer expert in this company, there is still definitely those opportunities to really just be, the go-to person that everyone goes, okay, they know what they're talking about. They're the person that we go to for kind of that deep knowledge. So there are opportunities. I think it just depends on also understanding what you're interested in as a student. I know it's a big question, right? But it's just keeping that in mind as you go about even the first job or first few jobs, and it's just using that as kind of okay, I've tried these different things, hey, I like doing a bunch of different things, or no, I really want to find a job where I can just focus just on polymers and just on this particular application. And that also helps, I think, in terms of guiding your future career.
And is there time to adjust? I mean, a lot of the questions come up with like, how do I already need to know my path, right? And like where, like the target where I want to go at the start versus, I mean, Kermit, your path has been somewhat organically evolving, right? In fact, now there's a question about how you even describe your role as a technical advisor relative to what you've done before. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, to what degree do you need to know where you're going to be at 50 or 60 when you get started at graduate school?
I would say, what was it? Not much, because quite honestly, and this goes back to, I think, Javier's question about internship, where when I came out of school, okay, honestly, I was very ignorant and naive about industry. So the only thing I knew was what I experienced, which is, oh, okay, there's a lab. It's kind of like a university. It's like you do something similar like university. But like once you get into industry, and this is where an internship is very useful, whether you do it as an undergrad or as a graduate. I know graduates may be a little bit more challenging to have an intern at a graduate level. But main thing is you get in there and you see how organizations work, because it was eye-opening for me. There's so many jobs and roles that people have that you have no idea exist until you get into industry. You go, wow, because everything's so specialized, because it's like it's like running a big battleship. Everyone has a role to play, and you don't see that until you actually get into it. And you see, there's people, I mean, these are scientists dedicated for this, like whether it's analytical, these type of testing, whether it's application development, whether it's HSC, whether health and safety, whether it's product stewardship, whether it's extrusion, whether it's molding. So you have all these people doing different roles. And I think that there is, once you get in there, then you see, oh, wow, what is it that is interesting to me? And you only know what's available when you see it, and then maybe get to get a feel for it. So then each person's path could be very different, because you have a lot of these opportunities. And that's just, talking about one location or one business unit. You talk about these companies where you have, they're global, like BASF, what is it, like 100,000 employees? It's huge. So even within the same company, there's so much it's a whole big universe that's there. So as far as your career path, it can vary for everyone. So I think that having an open mind is very important. Don't have it predetermined. This is what I'm gonna do, you know, because once you get in there, it's very eye-opening.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing, right? Well, I mean, I didn't go into industry and went to academia, but I had this very narrow viewpoint of what industry was like, right? And I certainly, in interacting now with my role with a lot of industry people,
Yeah.
I realized how wrong I was, right? And how actually broad and diverse and different types of opportunities are there. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, like for instance, we have a lot of PhD scientists who may decide to go into IP, like patent law, or we have a lot of marketing folks who are former PhD scientists. They went that way, so it's very eye-opening.
So we have about 8 minutes tall. I was going to just look at, there's 3 questions that I wanted to just, as a super fast. One of them is coming from Mike Lake, and it asks, what conferences or conventions are most important to your companies, and which ones best overlap, right? And I think this gets back to kind of the networking question. You know, can you just each list maybe 2 conferences that you guys think that your companies go to?
I can start off. To me, ACS is always a good one for us, and then there's ACS and SPE is for us.
I'll add a more unconventional answer to that question. A lot of companies, including 3M, have these research symposia that you can apply to as a graduate student. And so those are really good ways that are opportunities that don't cost you as a graduate student money or your graduate group money to go to or attend. So those, I would seek those out. That's a really good way to learn about the company and learn about opportunities and learn about career trajectories. I went to a few as a graduate student, and I know 3M hosts a few different ones now. So, and I know our other panelists have also similar types of programs.
And I just threw one out to answer Mike's first question, but SLAS is an automation conference actually, but a lot of both chemistry and biotech industry goes to that, and is a good place to just really connect, and it's free, and they hold it around the country. But I think also I would suggest, I think ACS is a great place, definitely, but also sometimes going to, for example, for us at BASF Enzymes, protein engineering conferences are very key, obviously. But going to some of those smaller conferences gives you a much better chance to really just interact with key people in that particular industry. And it doesn't mean that, just because you go to a protein engineering conference, you're only going to meet people focused in enzymology or biochemistry, but it's a good way to kind of get to meet some people, especially if that's a topic area that you might be particularly interested in.
Great. Javier, I think we're technically over time. There's a couple of, yeah.
I don't remember what our time is.
Yeah.
Probably transition and let everyone know about the office hours and potential to interact with the panelists throughout the networking opportunities. Paul, I think that's a good transition.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you. I think this is a great conversation. I think we could easily spend another hour talking about all this stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Yeah, next up, we do have a bit of a stretching break, but also office hours with Adam, Eleni, myself, about whether if you were interested in writing a proposal for BioPACIFIC, but also a bit of time to do some networking. You can ask Debbie to set up a breakout room and spin you out. And if Kelvin, Kermit, and Annabelle have time, hopefully they can join us on the next link. Debbie just posted the link in the chat, so you can use that to go directly. And then maybe just for the last 2 questions that are there, if the 3 panelists can give a quick look and type a quick answer, then we'll tackle that. If not, then catch them up, right? As Annabelle said, you can flood her inbox. So this is a great opportunity to then take her up on that and ask those questions. So with that, thank you very much to the 3 of you. I think it's been really great to chat, and hopefully we'll see you at more of these events.
That's right. Thanks, everyone.